Hey folks. All right, so today we're first time doing a live stream. Not exactly sure how this works, so bear with me for all the technical difficulties, whatever. But so what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be checking out the XML service, which is a library that you can use with Google Apps Scripts that allows you to parse through XML and HTML. So let's switch over to our script project over here. We have a brand new one that we just started. It's called XML demo, and we're just going to write a quick function here that's going to do essentially call a website the same way that we would call an API. So let's say request website data, and we're going to do the same thing that we typically do, right? We're going to get the URL and everything. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to be gathering some data or these images from the text from superheroes, because this is always fun. This guy tends to put in some pretty funny stuff. Basically, just as it says, text from superheroes, right? It's kind of funny. Why do you wear goggles? You keep bugs from getting in my eyes while I fly, blah, blah, blah. It's pretty funny. I would say if you haven't checked this out, please do, but careful because you can end up wasting a lot of time. But anyhow, so what this website also has is a slash sitemaps.xml file that we can use, and then there's a couple of these different ones here. So we're going to go over to sitemap1.xml, and that's going to bring us to essentially the same way that Google would be crawling this website. And so we're going to gather the latest post that they put in. So this one is called goggles, and if we go over to that URL, that's going to give us the most recent one, which we were just looking at, where they're just talking to each other, and this is the Winter Soldier and the new Captain America, or the Falcon. Yeah, so Sergeant Barnes and Rhodey. Right, Rhodey? No, not Rhodey. I don't remember all the names. But whatever. The case is that we're going to be hitting this URL, and we're going to grab that. So we're going to be using the XML service to parse the data. So we're just going to do the same thing we typically do for any API endpoint. We're going to say URL fetch app.fetch and then the URL. So let's go back over to our code. First, let's copy this URL. Go back to our code here. I'm going to say const URL equals to that URL that we were going to be using. And then we're going to say for the options, which, there's not really going to be that many options that we need to do. The only thing is that I want to set the headers to be application type. So content type. I'm going to set this equal to application/XML because we are going to be reading XML data from there. And then we're going to make the method get. And that's basically all the options that we're going to need. So in here, now we're going to declare our response, and our response is essentially going to take the form of the URL fetch app. I'm going to do fetch, and we're going to take in our URL, and then as well as our options. And then from here, we don't actually need to get the content text. Let's actually just run this first and see what we get. So let's put in a console.log here, just so that we have a place that we can put in information. All right, save this. We put a debugger, and then when we run this for the first time, it's going to ask us to authorize. So bear with it. It's going to be a little bit slower. The screen might change up a little bit. Don't worry about that. Yeah, so if you've never used the XML service before, basically uses like root options and all of that. Here, I gotta actually authorize. Give me a second. But it essentially uses the kind of like the root and the children element. So you have to navigate it a little bit. It's a little bit different than say if you were going through something like an API that's giving you back JSON and everything's pretty well defined. All right, so it's still authorizing, and looks like it completed that. We're going to go back over to our code now. All right, so got the response, and there's a bunch of things that we can do within the response. We can get the content, we can get content text. Let's see what the content text looks like actually. So we're going to go back into our URL fetch line of code, and we're going to say get content text. save that, stop the debugger and run it again. All right, so we got a response over here. And this response, if you look over all the way to the right over here, you see that it's the same thing that we were getting from the sitemaps, right? You got the URL set and you got the location. And that's the superheroes.com. And then the last modification, which is great, perfect. All right, so now that we have that, we want to parse this using the XML service. So we're going to come down a line, and then we're going to say const, I don't know, or what do we call it? Let's call it XML. We're going to call it XmlService.parse, and then we're going to parse the response. All right, and then in the console log, let's just say this. We're going to do that for the XML. Stop it, debug again. This is basically what hitting an API or parsing data looks like. Really, you're just going to constantly keep going back and forth. All right, so we got XML here, to string, get document, has root element. You can do all this stuff. So we're probably going to want to get the root element of it. So we're going to use this guy, get root element, and then we're going to figure out what that all looks like. So back down here, we're going to say const root equals to XML dot get root elements. And let's see what that root element looks like. But before we run this, let's go over to the XML service documentation. There's a lot of stuff here, but let's just go over to one that we care about. So this is going to create a new document when you do the parse. So we're going to go over to the document object and the documentation here and see what we can do. We have the get root element, which returns the element. And that element, from there, when we go over to the element class, let's see what else we can do. We should be able to, what we essentially want to do is go down as far as we can where we can start getting the text from one of the content. So this one actually does have, so the element has a .get class method, which is what we're going to be using. So we have is elements, where to go? Okay, get text. So I guess the text value of the element node. So that's what we're going to get down to. So we're going to go from the root to the element and then try to find the right one that we want. All right, so this is what it looks like. Just remember, there's going to be a URL set and then a bunch of URLs underneath of it. And we're always going to try to pull the latest one. So we're going to go, if this is an array, we'll go to position 1 since position 0 is the first. The array started at 0. Just remember that. All right, so we have the root. Let's stop the debugger and run this again. See what the root looks like. Make sure that it is an element type. So we got that, got text. And we might actually need to get the children of it so that we can actually see where we're at. So let's first, let's just really keep pushing this through, and then we're going to get the console log. All right, so console log gives me a space, namespace, root is element, URL set. All right, so the question is, how do we get down a little further? We're going to say const child equals root dot get child, get children. And then the children, so let's just call this a children instead. Children, there should be a bunch of them, I think. Let's hit the debugger. Let's see what we get back in there. So children, there's 501 in this array. So for the first one, if we get the text of that, that should theoretically give us actually one of these. There's some children in here as well. So let's do that. Let's just show you guys what it looks like. So we're gonna say, let's do a for loop. So we're gonna say for let item in children, and then we're gonna say if item equals 0, then do this. Otherwise, we're not going to do anything. Else, we're just going to continue. Wait, no, we're going to break it. So the reason I'm doing this is because we don't want to go through all 501 because we're not scraping it. We just want to get the latest superhero text message. So we're going to start with the first one. So that should give us actually the main website. So going back over to the sitemap, that should give us this guy over here. and we want this one. So it will be the first, but we're just going to test this out with the first position first. There's a lot of first. All right, so children with the brackets item, and then we're going to say dot get text. So let's grab a console log. I'm actually kind of lazy, so I'm just going to copy and paste this. And we're going to say let text equals that, and we'll respond back with this. Actually, I don't know why I didn't change this wording before. We'll call this stuff. All right, so stop the execution, run the debugger again. All right, so text is blank. Why is text blank? So this should be going 0, get children, set text, get text. Let's get child text? No. Let's get the name. Let's see what the name looks like. Doing it live. Oh, no, don't run that. We're gonna debug it. All right, let's see. Okay, so text is URL. This is good. So the name is URL, which is good. So we want to go down into the URL and then get the value for loc or location. All right, so from here, we're going to say loc equals children item dot get. Is there a way I can get a child? So we can do the name of the string. So let's say loc dot get text. Take that. All right, so when we run this, I think this is what it's going to do. It's going to go through to the first position in the array. It's going to get the child named LOC or location, and it's going to get the text from it. And hopefully that will display the text back. Let's stop and then reset the debugger. All right, so we have children. Did I run into a problem? I might have ran into a problem. All right, let's see what the issue is. Cannot read property get text of null. Okay, so maybe this doesn't exist. Let's go over to our documentation. All right, so if we get child name, gets the first element node and given name with no namespace. Okay, all right. Could be that, or what if we said get children name? Gets all element nodes with the given name and no namespace. Let's see. No, this does exist. It always exists. That is what we want. Let's get the children again. So instead of this, we're going to say get children, and then let's not rename the variables. I'm kind of lazy. Let's just see what it gives us back. All right, so we got a bunch of things here. So, okay, so we got the location, change you can see, and then the last mod. If I say this, what does it give us? Okay, blank. Get descendants. No, that's not what we want. I mean, we could do it like this. It's just a little ugly. So, okay. Here, let's do this. All right, we're going to change this to position 1 now, and then we're going to say URL equals to get children, and then we're just going to say this is position 0 because it's always showing up at the top. I think we can do that. All right, let's restart the debugger. Right, so if it's, all right, that actually makes sense. We skipped that all over. So we can say else if item equals 0, then we're going to say continue. Okay, there we go. That's prettier. All right, let's restart that. Debug. All right, look at that. Perfect. So that's it's a little brute forcing it. Can't think of a better way to do it right now. Probably because we're streaming and I feel like I'm on the spot. That's okay. This works. So this is what we have for the URL, which is just traversing through this XML file over here. So just a little recap. So what we did was we got the root element, which is URL set, and then we got the children, which was these bunch of URLs here. And we went to position 1, got the children of that, and then got the first position in that array that came back. So this is the LOC. And then it gave us back goggles or Googles. Yes. So if we wanted to do the next one from that, we'd actually just set, instead of doing position 1, we'd do position 2. But so what we're actually going to do is we're going to go back one step even further. We're going to take in the last mod date, and we're going to see whether or not it's new. So if it's new, it'll be today, and then we'll just use something along the lines of like comparing it and then outputting, yeah, this is a new one, or if it's not, we're going to ignore it. So going back over here, let's actually, do we need, yeah, we're going to keep this. So we're going to say let URL equal that, and then we're going to say the last mod date. So before we do any of that, let's go up here and then let's declare a couple of variables here. We're going to declare the URL, and then we're going to declare the created or last mod. Let's just call it last mod. So we're going to define those, and then in here we're going to, within the for loop, we're going to say last mod, and the URL, we're going to set those equal to we need. So instead of 0, that's going to be position 1. All the rest of this is fine, so we can leave that alone. We don't need this anymore. So what we'll do now is we're going to get today's date. So we're going to say const today equals new date, and then we need to get the last mod and then figure out what that date is. So because it's in a certain format, we might need to format this date a little bit here. Let's see what we get back first though. By doing this, let's get the last mod date equals new date, and then let's let's paste in the last mod in here and then see what we get back. So let's do another line here. We'll just say console log placeholder. Shove that in there. Stop the debugger. Let's restart that. Whoops. Did not put in placeholder. All right, so right, we declared URL already. We're going to call this one request URL. Go back over to our URL fetch at, make sure we put that in. So we have URL down here. All right, so now it's a debug. All right, so we got the URL. If we go back over here, we have the last mod date from the site maps. And then now we also have the last mod date that we set into a date, but it's not doing it exactly because it's doing, looks like GMT. No. Why is it setting the date before? Let's, all right, so what we might want to do is, there's something in app scripts that you can use called utilities. and then format date. And so we're going to format this date. We're going to put them all to GMT. And then we'll just put it into your, I don't really care too much about the time. So I think that's good. So we're going to do the same thing to this new date down here. Actually, just copy and paste. All right. So I think at the end, when we restart this, we should see those dates look a little bit better. Let's go ahead and debug. All right, so today is the 27th of March, and also the last mod date is also the 27th of March. Perfect. So that's good. So this is new. And so one last thing before we close out this first ever live stream, which was kind of fun, but also nerve-wracking. We're going to do if today is equal to last mod date, then we're going to say there was a new post. There was a new superhero text post. Yeah, superheroes text post. And then we're just going to place that in here. And that's the URL. And else, we're just going to say nothing. So nothing was new. We'll copy down this console log and say there is no new post today. The last one was on, and then over here we'll do the last mod date. Last mod date. All right, so let's stop this, and then we're gonna run, and we should expect to get a console log of that there was a new post, and the new post is this URL. And let's say, just for sake of testing it out, let's say today does not equal that. We should get the other one, right? Yeah, we should get this one now because it is equal to today. So let's just run this. There's no new post. Okay, so all that works. We're just going to change this back over to a regular comparison, not a negation. And yeah, so this is basically it. Just quick things to note. You want to get the root element, then you want to get the children, and then you can traverse through the children. If you have specific names that you can use to pinpoint things, you can do that. I'll probably just do another video that dives a little bit more in depth into really narrowing down each individual element and finding things, narrowing it down. Just a little bit involved that you really have to go in there and search things up. But essentially, you can really just use the XML service to go to a website and find some data from it. I've used it to get a bunch of business info for work before. And it's just an easy thing that you can do to go through hundreds of pages without having to do it manually. You just write a script and go do them, as long as you know what URLs you need to hit and the basic structure of that page, and it doesn't change, which a lot of the websites out there today, especially the aggregated ones, are following templates. So the data should basically be at the same place most of the time, if not all the time. But yeah, so that was fun. If you want to see other stuff, just go ahead and leave a comment or something. Send me a message. You can always email feedback at bootstrapping.tools. Always here to help. But we're making other videos too on various topics. So just let us know if there's anything interesting. And that sounds good. All right. See ya. Have a great rest of your Sundays.